mother and baby in 1918 seem peaceful. When you look closer, you notice someone else is watching them. In November 2024, antique collector Robert Martinez was browsing through an estate sale in Santa Fe, New Mexico, when he discovered a photograph that would uncover one of the American Southwest's most haunting family mysteries from the World War I era. The black and white image, tucked inside a worn leather portfolio, showed a young Hispanic woman in a white blouse sitting peacefully with an infant on her lap, both appearing serene in what seemed to be a typical family portrait from 1918. The photograph bore the stamp Hernandez Photography Studio, Santa Fe, and was dated October 12, 1918. At first glance, it appeared to be an unremarkable maternal portrait, the kind that families often commissioned to commemorate their children's early months during an era when infant mortality rates made such documentation precious. However, when Martinez examined the photograph under magnification at his shop later that day, he noticed something deeply unsettling in the composition. While the mother and baby occupied the center of the frame, appearing calm and composed, there was a barely visible figure in the background shadows. Someone else was present in the photograph, partially concealed behind what appeared to be a doorway or curtain. The hidden figure's presence was subtle but unmistakable once noticed, a pale face with dark, intense eyes watching the mother and child from the shadows. The person appeared to be deliberately hiding, positioned so that only part of their face was visible to the camera. Martinez, who specialized in southwestern historical artifacts, recognized the setting as typical of affluent Hispanic homes in Santa Fe during the 1910s. The furniture and interior details suggested a family of some means, but the presence of the watching figure transformed what should have been a peaceful domestic scene into something far more ominous. The portfolio containing the photograph had belonged to the Morales family, whose descendants were selling their ancestral home after the death of the family matriarch. When Martinez contacted 78-year-old Carmen Morales about the photograph, her reaction was immediate and emotional. "Dios mío," she whispered upon seeing the image. "That's the photograph grandmother never wanted us to see. She kept it hidden for decades, always saying it brought bad memories of los tiempos difíciles, the difficult times." Carmen revealed that the woman in the photograph was her great-grandmother, Isabella Morales, and the infant was Isabella's daughter Carmen, Carmen's own grandmother. But Carmen had never known about the mysterious watcher in the shadows. "Grandmother Isabella never spoke about what happened in 1918, Carmen explained. "All we knew was that something terrible occurred that year that changed our family forever." The Hernandez Photography Studio had served Santa Fe's Hispanic community for over 3 decades, from 1890 to 1923, before closing during the economic difficulties that followed World War I. The studio's records had been donated to the New Mexico History Museum, where archivist Dr. Sofia Hernandez, granddaughter of the original photographer, maintained the collection. When Martinez contacted her about the mysterious photograph, Dr. Hernandez was intrigued by the hidden figure he had discovered. "Grandfather was meticulous about his compositions," she explained as they examined the studio's appointment books and commission records. "He would never have allowed an unauthorized person to appear in a formal family portrait." The studio records for October 12, 1918, revealed an unusual entry that immediately caught their attention. Instead of the typical client information, photographer Eduardo Hernandez had written, "Emergency session, Morales family, payment in advance, special security concerns, photograph for protection purposes." Dr. Hernandez found additional context in her grandfather's personal journal, which he had kept separate from his business records. The entry for October 12, 1918, provided disturbing details. Approached by Don Carlos Morales regarding urgent family portrait, Senora Isabella appeared distressed, insisted session be conducted with maximum privacy. Don Carlos mentioned threats against the family and need for evidence of their situation. The journal entry continued with technical notes that revealed the photographer's own concerns. Strange request to photograph Senora Isabella, an infant in main parlor, while maintaining view of background doorway. Don Carlos positioned himself to watch street during session. Detected movement in shadows during exposure, but family insisted session continue. Eduardo Hernandez had made a note 3 days later that proved significant. Don Carlos returned requesting all plates and prints be kept confidential, paid additional fee for exclusive custody of images, mentioned family may need to disappear for safety, and photographs should be preserved as record of their existence in Santa Fe. The studio records showed that this was Eduardo Hernandez's final commission for the Morales family, despite having photographed them regularly for family events since 1905. His journal contained no further references to them, suggesting that whatever threat they faced in October 1918 had indeed forced them to leave Santa Fe. Dr. Hernandez discovered one final chilling detail in her grandfather's records. A notation dated October 20, 1918, exactly 1 week after the photograph, stated, "Police Detective Sanchez inquired about Morales' family portrait session, advised him of client confidentiality but provided general confirmation of October 12th appointment. Detective seemed very concerned about family's welfare and current location." The evidence suggested that the mysterious figure in the photograph might have been connected to whatever danger had threatened the Morales family in 1918. Santa Fe Police Department records from 1918 were housed in the city's historical archives, where decades of criminal investigations and incident reports provided insight into the social tensions that had affected the city during World War I. Detective Captain Maria Santos agreed to help Martinez search for any official investigations involving the Morales family. The search revealed a complex case involving accusations of German sympathies, business rivalries, and ethnic tensions that had plagued many Hispanic families during the war years. On October 15, 1918, just 3 days after the photograph was taken, Detective Alfonso Sanchez had filed a report about threats made against Carlos Morales and his family. The police report identified Carlos Morales as a successful merchant who owned several businesses in Santa Fe's Plaza district, including a general store that served both Hispanic and Anglo customers. However, his prosperity had made him a target during a period when loyalty to the American war effort was often questioned along ethnic and economic lines. According to Detective Sanchez's investigation notes, Carlos had been receiving anonymous threatening letters since September 1918, accusing him of trading with the enemy and supporting German interests. The accusations appeared to stem from his business relationships with German-American merchants in Colorado and his refusal to participate in local war bond rallies. The threats had escalated in early October when someone had broken into the Morales home while the family was attending church, leaving behind a note that read, "We are watching you and your family. Leave Santa Fe or face the consequences of your treasonous activities." Most significantly, the police investigation had identified a suspect in the threatening campaign, William Thompson, an Anglo businessman who had been competing with Carlos for several lucrative government contracts to supply local military installations. Thompson had been publicly vocal about his belief that Hispanic merchants were not sufficiently patriotic and should be excluded from war-related business. Detective Sanchez's notes revealed that Thompson had been seen near the Morales home on multiple occasions in October 1918, often accompanied by associates who appeared to be conducting surveillance of the family's activities. Neighbors had reported seeing men watching the house from across the street and following family members during their daily routines. The police investigation had been complicated by the social dynamics of 1918 Santa Fe, where accusations of disloyalty could destroy families even without evidence. Detective Sanchez noted that many witnesses were reluctant to provide information, fearing they might become targets themselves. The case file's most disturbing entry was dated October 18, 1918. Morales family reported missing by concerned neighbors. House appears to have been vacated suddenly with personal belongings left behind. No indication of forced departure, but circumstances suggest family fled due to escalating threats. The investigation had reached a dead end when police could find no trace of where the Morales family had gone after leaving Santa Fe. Martinez's investigation into the economic context surrounding the Morales family's disappearance revealed a complex web of business competition, wartime paranoia, and ethnic discrimination that had characterized Santa Fe during the final months of World War I. County records and newspaper archives painted a picture of a community divided by suspicion and economic opportunism. Carlos Morales had built a successful business empire beginning in the 1890s, capitalizing on Santa Fe's position as a trading hub between Mexican, Anglo, and Native American communities. His enterprises included a general store, a freight hauling operation, and several real estate investments that had made him one of the wealthiest Hispanic businessmen in northern New Mexico. However, his success had attracted the attention of competitors like William Thompson, an Anglo merchant from Kansas, who had arrived in Santa Fe in 1915, seeking opportunities in the expanding wartime economy. Business license records showed that Thompson had repeatedly attempted to secure contracts, that Carlos had traditionally handled, particularly supply agreements with Fort Marcy and other military installations. The Santa Fe, New Mexican newspaper archives revealed the public nature of their rivalry. In August 1918, Thompson had written a letter to the editor questioning whether foreign-born merchants should be trusted with sensitive military contracts during wartime. While he didn't name Carlos specifically, the Hispanic business community understood the letter as a direct attack on their legitimacy. Carlos had responded with his own letter, published September 3, 1918, defending his family's American citizenship and detailing their contributions to the war effort, including substantial purchases of war bonds and donations to Red Cross activities. However, his defense may have only intensified Thompson's campaign against him. Federal Bureau of Investigation files, declassified decades later, showed that Thompson had contacted government agents in September 1918, claiming to have evidence of Carlos's disloyal activities. Thompson alleged that Carlos was overcharging for military supplies and maintaining suspicious correspondence with German-American merchants in Colorado. The FBI investigation, conducted by Agent James Morrison, had found no evidence to support Thompson's accusations. Morrison's report, dated October 5, 1918, concluded that Carlos Morales was a loyal American citizen whose business practices appear entirely legitimate and whose family has demonstrated clear support for the war effort. However, the damage to Carlos's reputation had already been done. Local business associates began distancing themselves from him, and several contracts were canceled due to security concerns raised by competitors. Church records from San Miguel Mission, where the Morales family worshipped, documented the social isolation they had begun experiencing by October 1918. Father Miguel Garcia noted in parish records that the Morales family has been subjected to unfair suspicions and harassment by certain members of the community who seek to profit from wartime fears. The evidence suggested that the mysterious watcher in the photograph might have been one of Thompson's associates conducting surveillance of the family, possibly captured accidentally during what was intended to be a private family portrait session. Further investigation into William Thompson's activities during October 1918 revealed an organized campaign of intimidation that extended beyond simple business competition. Court records and witness statements preserved in the Santa Fe County archives documented a pattern of harassment that explained why the Morales family had felt the need to document their situation through photography. Thompson had recruited several associates to help monitor Carlos Morales' activities, ostensibly to gather evidence of disloyal behavior. These men, identified in police reports as George Mitchell, Frank Wilson, and Samuel Anderson, were all recent arrivals to Santa Fe who appeared to be working exclusively for Thompson rather than pursuing their own business interests. Neighbor testimony, recorded by Detective Sanchez, revealed that these men had been conducting systematic surveillance of the Morales home beginning in late September 1918. Mrs. Elena Garcia, who lived across the street, reported seeing strange men watching the house at all hours, sometimes hiding in doorways or behind trees to observe the family's movements. The surveillance had become more aggressive in early October. Shopkeeper Juan Valdez, whose store was located near Carlos's business, reported that Thompson's associates had been questioning customers about their interactions with the Morales family and had tried to convince other merchants to refuse service to Carlos. Most significantly, Thompson's men had begun following Isabella Morales and her infant daughter during their daily activities. Midwife Carmen Salazar, who had been caring for Isabella after the baby's birth, reported that men were watching Senora Isabella even when she came to the market or visited church. She became very frightened and began staying inside the house most days. The pattern of surveillance explained why Carlos had insisted on the emergency photography session with maximum privacy concerns. According to Eduardo Hernandez's journal, Carlos had specifically requested that the photograph be taken in a way that would show both his wife and infant daughter and any potential watchers who might be present. The hidden figure in the photograph appeared to be one of Thompson's surveillance operatives who had been watching the house during the family portrait session. The person's positioning suggested they had been hiding deliberately but had been caught by the camera's composition. Detective Sanchez's investigation notes revealed that the surveillance campaign had intensified after the photograph was taken. On October 14, 1918, neighbors reported seeing Thompson's associates conducting what appeared to be reconnaissance of the house's exits and entrances, as if planning some kind of action against the family. The final escalation came on October 17th, when someone broke into the Morales home while the family was attending evening mass. The intruders had searched through personal papers and left behind a threatening note that warned, "We know everything about your activities. Leave town within 24 hours or face the consequences." Carlos had apparently decided that the threats were credible enough to warrant immediate departure, abandoning his business interests and home to protect his family's safety. The sudden departure of the Morales family from Santa Fe in October 1918 created a mystery that puzzled local authorities and neighbors for decades. Property records and eyewitness accounts revealed that Carlos had abandoned significant assets and disappeared without providing any indication of his family's destination. On October 18, 1918, neighbors noticed that the Morales house appeared to be empty, with curtains drawn and no signs of normal activity. When concerned friends went to check on the family, they found the front door unlocked and evidence that the family had packed hastily, but had left behind many valuable possessions. Detective Sanchez's investigation report described the scene. House appears to have been vacated suddenly during nighttime hours. Family clothing and personal items removed, but furniture, business records, and valuable household items remain untouched. No signs of forced entry or struggle. Bank records from First National Bank of Santa Fe showed that Carlos had withdrawn a substantial amount of cash, $2,847, on October 17, 1918, closing out most of his business accounts. However, he had been unable to liquidate his real estate holdings or collect outstanding debts owed to his businesses. The family's priest, Father Miguel Garcia, provided additional context about their departure. In a letter to the bishop dated October 25, 1918, he wrote, "The Morales family has been forced to flee our community due to persecution based on false accusations. Don Carlos visited me on October 17th to request prayers for their safety and to arrange for the care of certain religious items they could not take with them." Father Garcia revealed that Carlos had been vague about their destination, saying only that they were traveling to a place where Isabella and the baby would be safe from those who wished to harm us. He had promised to contact the priest once they were settled, but no communication was ever received. Railroad records from the Santa Fe depot showed that tickets had been purchased on October 18th for a family matching the Morales description, but the destination had been listed only as eastbound, a common practice for passengers who wanted to maintain privacy about their final destination. Station agent Miguel Romero reported that a man matching Carlos's description had purchased tickets for himself, his wife, and infant child, paying cash and requesting seats on the earliest available train. The family had waited in a private area of the station and had boarded quickly when the train arrived. However, the trail went cold after the family's departure from Santa Fe. Despite extensive efforts by both police and private investigators hired by business associates, no confirmed sightings of the Morales family were ever documented. Property records showed that their house and business assets were eventually sold at auction in 1920 to satisfy outstanding debts and tax obligations. William Thompson purchased several of Carlos's former business contracts at significantly reduced prices, effectively achieving his goal of eliminating his primary competition. The photograph with the mysterious watcher became the only remaining evidence of the family's final days in Santa Fe, preserved as a haunting reminder of the circumstances that had forced them to abandon everything they had built. By 1919, the Morales family's disappearance had become one of Santa Fe's most persistent mysteries, prompting both official and unofficial investigations that revealed the broader context of ethnic tensions and economic exploitation during the post-war period. Federal authorities, concerned about the social stability of southwestern communities, had begun examining cases where Hispanic families had been forced to flee due to harassment. FBI agent James Morrison, who had originally investigated the loyalty accusations against Carlos Morales, reopened his inquiry in February 1919 after receiving reports about similar incidents affecting other Hispanic business owners throughout New Mexico. His expanded investigation, documented in federal files, revealed a pattern of intimidation that extended far beyond simple business rivalry. Morrison's report identified William Thompson as the leader of what appeared to be an organized effort to drive successful Hispanic merchants out of lucrative government contracts. Thompson had used accusations of disloyalty as a weapon to eliminate competition, knowing that wartime paranoia would make it difficult for his targets to defend themselves effectively. The investigation revealed that Thompson's associates, Mitchell, Wilson, and Anderson, were not legitimate businessmen, but rather hired operatives who specialized in surveillance and intimidation. Court records showed that similar men had been involved in business disputes in Colorado and Arizona, always working to eliminate Hispanic and German-American competitors. Agent Morrison's February 1919 report stated, Thompson appears to have developed a systematic method for identifying successful minority business owners, fabricating accusations of disloyalty, and using harassment to force them to abandon their enterprises. The Morales case represents the most successful application of these tactics. However, the federal investigation faced significant obstacles. Thompson had been careful to avoid direct criminal activity, instead using social pressure and economic manipulation to achieve his goals. The men conducting surveillance of the Morales family had never been charged with any specific crimes. More troubling was the discovery that Thompson had received support from certain local officials who shared his view that Hispanic business owners should be excluded from war-related contracts. City Council meeting minutes from late 1918 showed discussions about ensuring American loyalty in government contracting that appeared to target specific ethnic communities. The federal investigation also uncovered evidence that the photograph session at the Hernandez studio had been monitored by Thompson's operatives. Eduardo Hernandez's journal contained a note that he had observed suspicious men watching the studio during the Morales family portrait session on October 12, 1918. This surveillance explained how the mysterious watcher had been captured in the photograph. Thompson's associates had been monitoring the family so closely that one of them had been positioned to observe even their private family moments. Agent Morrison's investigation concluded in June 1919 with recommendations for federal monitoring of business practices in southwestern communities, but by then the Morales family had been missing for 8 months with no credible leads about their location. Private investigator Samuel Garcia, hired by Carlos Morales' business associates and concerned members of Santa Fe's Hispanic community, conducted an extensive search for the missing family throughout 1919 and 1920. His investigation reports, preserved in the Garcia family archives, documented a systematic effort to trace the family's movements across the American Southwest. Garcia's investigation began with railroad records from stations throughout New Mexico, Colorado, and Texas. While the family had purchased eastbound tickets in Santa Fe, Garcia discovered that they had changed trains in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and had then traveled south toward Albuquerque rather than continuing east. Hotel registers in Albuquerque showed that a family matching the Morales description had stayed at the Hotel Andaluz for 3 nights in late October 1918, registering under the name Martinez. The hotel clerk, interviewed by Garcia in 1919, remembered the family because the woman had seemed nervous and the man had paid cash while avoiding conversation with other guests. From Albuquerque, the trail led to El Paso, Texas, where similar hotel records suggested the family had spent several days before crossing into Mexico. Border crossing documents from October 1918 were incomplete, but Mexican customs officials in Ciudad Juarez confirmed that American families had been crossing regularly during this period to escape various difficulties in the United States. Garcia's investigation revealed that the Morales family had not been alone in their flight. Several other Hispanic families from New Mexico had left their communities during late 1918 and early 1919, many citing harassment and business persecution. This pattern suggested that Thompson's tactics had been more successful than federal investigators had realized. The most promising lead came from Father Jose Martinez at Our Lady of Guadalupe Church in Ciudad Juarez, who reported that an American family matching the Morales description had sought assistance in November 1918. The family had claimed to be refugees from persecution by business rivals and had requested help finding a safe place to settle. Father Martinez's parish records showed that the family had remained in Ciudad Juarez for approximately 2 months before continuing their journey south. The priest had provided them with letters of introduction to other parishes in central Mexico, but he had not maintained contact with them after their departure. Garcia followed the trail to Mexico City, where he found evidence that Carlos had attempted to establish a new business importing goods from the United States. Mexican business license records from early 1919 showed applications for import permits filed by Carlos Martinez, but these applications had been withdrawn before approval. The final confirmed sighting of the Morales family came from Guadalajara, where a Catholic school teacher named Sister Maria Esperanza reported that a young mother matching Isabella's description had enrolled her infant daughter in the convent's child care program in March 1919. However, the family had disappeared from Guadalajara as well. leaving behind only the notation that they were continuing their journey to find a place where they could live without fear. Garcia's investigation concluded in 1920 with the assessment that the Morales family had likely settled somewhere in central Mexico under assumed identities, but their exact location remained unknown. In 1952, 34 years after the Morales family's disappearance, a breakthrough in the case came from an unexpected source. Sister Carmen Morales, a Catholic nun working at an orphanage in Guadalajara, Mexico, contacted the Diocese of Santa Fe with information about her family's fate that had been kept secret for decades. Sister Carmen revealed that she was, in fact, the infant from the 1918 photograph, the baby who had been held by Isabella Morales during that final family portrait session in Santa Fe. Her letter to Bishop Garcia explained the family's journey and the reasons they had never returned to New Mexico. According to Sister Carmen's account, the family had indeed fled to Mexico in October 1918, traveling under the assumed name Martinez to avoid detection by Thompson's associates. Her father Carlos had been convinced that the surveillance and threats would follow them anywhere in the United States, making permanent exile their only option for safety. The family had settled in a small town near Guadalajara, where Carlos had established a modest trading business serving local farmers and craftsmen. However, the stress of constant vigilance and the loss of everything they had built in Santa Fe had taken a severe toll on both parents. Isabella Morales had never recovered from the trauma of fleeing her home while caring for an infant. Sister Carmen's letter described her mother as having suffered from chronic anxiety and depression, always fearful that Thompson's men would somehow track them to Mexico. Carlos had maintained correspondence with trusted friends in Santa Fe through intermediaries, learning that Thompson had indeed taken over much of his former business and that several other Hispanic families had also been forced to leave the community. This information had convinced him that returning to New Mexico would never be safe. The family's exile had ended tragically in 1925 when both parents died in an influenza epidemic that swept through central Mexico. 7-year-old Carmen had been taken in by the Sisters of Charity in Guadalajara, eventually joining the religious community herself. Sister Carmen's letter included copies of documents her father had preserved, including the threatening notes received in Santa Fe and correspondence with private investigator Garcia. Most significantly, she had kept the original glass plate negative from the 1918 family portrait, which Eduardo Hernandez had secretly provided to her father before the family's departure. The negative clearly showed the mysterious watcher in the background, a man whose face was partially visible in the shadows. Sister Carmen identified him as Frank Wilson, one of Thompson's associates who had been conducting surveillance of their home. Her letter concluded with a revelation that explained why the family had never contacted their friends in Santa Fe. "Papa made me promise never to return to New Mexico or contact anyone from our old life. He said that as long as people believed we had simply disappeared, we would be safe. But now that I am old, and those who threatened us are surely dead, I want our family's story to be known." Sister Carmen's testimony provided final confirmation that the mysterious figure in the 1918 photograph had been evidence of the surveillance that ultimately drove the Morales family into permanent exile. The revelation of Sister Carmen's identity and the family's fate provided closure to one of Santa Fe's longest-running mysteries, while also documenting a dark chapter in the city's history during the World War I era. Her testimony confirmed that the peaceful motherhood portrait from 1918 had actually captured a moment of surveillance and intimidation that forever changed her family's destiny. When Sister Carmen's letter reached Santa Fe in 1952, it prompted a formal review of wartime persecution cases by the New Mexico Historical Commission. The investigation revealed that the Morales family's experience had not been unique. At least 12 other Hispanic families had been forced to leave northern New Mexico between 1917 and 1920 due to similar harassment campaigns. William Thompson's business empire, built partially on assets acquired from families he had driven away, eventually collapsed during the Great Depression. Court records from the 1930s showed that many of his enterprises had been based on fraudulent practices and government contract manipulation. He died in poverty in 1934, never having been held accountable for his role in the persecution of Hispanic families. The Hernandez Photography Studios records, including the original glass plate negative of the Morales family portrait, were donated to the New Mexico History Museum in 1955. The photograph became part of an exhibit documenting immigrant experiences and ethnic tensions in the American Southwest. Sister Carmen continued her work at the Guadalajara orphanage until her death in 1989 at age 71. Her memoir, published posthumously, provided detailed documentation of her family's exile and served as historical evidence of the persecution faced by Hispanic business owners during the World War I era. The mysterious watcher in the 1918 photograph, identified as Frank Wilson, represented the systematic surveillance and intimidation tactics used to drive successful minority families from their communities. The image became a powerful symbol of how apparently peaceful domestic scenes could conceal underlying threats and social tensions. Modern historians studying the photograph have noted its significance as both a family portrait and a document of persecution. Dr. Elena Garcia of the University of New Mexico explains, "This image captures a moment when a mother and child appear peaceful and secure, but the hidden presence of their surveillance reveals the reality of the threats they faced." The Morales family home in Santa Fe, which had been sold at auction in 1920, was eventually converted to a museum documenting Hispanic business history in northern New Mexico. A plaque commemorates the family's contributions to the community and acknowledges the injustice that forced their departure. Today, the 1918 photograph serves as a reminder that even seemingly innocent family portraits can contain evidence of larger historical forces that shaped individual destinies. The mysterious figure watching from the shadows represents not supernatural phenomenon, but the very real presence of persecution and surveillance that drove countless families into exile during periods of social tension. Sister Carmen's decision to finally reveal her family's story ensured that their experience would be remembered as part of the broader narrative of immigrant resilience and the ongoing struggle for acceptance and security in American communities. The photograph continues to be displayed at the New Mexico History Museum, where visitors can observe how a closer examination reveals the hidden watcher whose presence transformed a simple motherhood portrait into documentation of one family's fight for survival against systematic persecution.